Michelle,
Go.
12 steps. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Conscious Contact speaker of Group of Alcoholics Anonymous. My name is Tara, and I'm an alcoholic. If you're new, we're so excited that you're here. This is a one-hour speaker meeting that meets every Saturday evening at St. Paul's Lutheran Church, 301 North Main Street at 8:30 p.m. in Doylestown, Pennsylvania. Food and fellowship starts at 8 p.m. The business meeting for this group meets every Saturday at 7 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. right here. The purpose of this group is to provide a constant message of hope, recovery through God's reliance and service to others through the practice of teaching of the 12 steps. We record all speakers so that others may benefit from their message of recovery. If you wish not to be recorded, simply ask. This is an open meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. The group would like to welcome everyone, especially newcomers. Is there anyone new or from out of town that would like to introduce themselves with their first name first? Well, welcome everybody. Like I said, we're so glad that you came out tonight. We like to party here. The Conscious Contact Speaker Group encourages sponsorship. Would anyone with working knowledge of the 12 steps and is willing to sponsor, please raise their hands. Are there any announcements for the good of AA? We have meeting lists and big books on easy terms. Please see me or any home group member after the meeting. If you cannot afford a big book, the Conscious Contact Speaker Group will give you one at no charge. Anyone willing to make donations for this purpose of the big book and CDs to help those who cannot afford them can put donations in the jar on the table marked big book and CD donations. If you would like a CD or any speaker, past or present, see me or any home group members before or after the meeting. They're available free of no charge. I've asked Sherry to come up and read the AA Preamble.
Hi, I'm Sherry. I'm an alcoholic. Hi, the AA Preamble. Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength, and hope with each other, that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We're self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organization, or institution. Does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics achieve sobriety. I've asked Michelle to come up and read the AA 12 Steps of Recovery.
Hi everyone, I'm Michelle and I'm an alcoholic. Step 1. We admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. Step 2. Came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. Step 3. Made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood Him. Step 4. Made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. Step 5. Admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. Step 6. We're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. Step 7. Humbly asked Him to remove our shortcomings. Step 8. Made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. Step 9. Made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. Step 10. Continued to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. Step 11. Sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood Him, praying only for knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out. Step 12. Having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we try to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all our affairs.
The seventh tradition states every AA group ought to be fully self-supporting, declining outside contribution. At this time, I would like to pass the basket. We have no dues or fees, but we have expenses. This group provides many services. Your donations cover rent, big books, CDs, events, and workshops, etc. There is absolutely no smoking on church property. Please take a moment to silence all cell phones and limit movement during the meeting to avoid distractions. Now, I'd like to introduce our speaker, a good friend of the Conscious Contact Speaker Group, Jen from New Jersey. Let's give her a warm welcome, y'all. Woo!
Hi guys, my name is Jen and I'm an alcoholic. Just making sure my phone's on silent. Do not disturb. It's so good to be here tonight. Thank you, Ron, for having me out. And I'll make sure I extend the thank you to Becky. Can you hear me good? Okay. So my name is Jen and I'm an alcoholic. My sobriety date is July 5th of 2014. I have a sponsor. She couldn't be here tonight because she has a newborn baby girl. But I also have the privilege, the honor and the privilege to sponsor other women. I have a home group. My home group is the Newfound Friends group of Alcoholics Anonymous. We meet at 7:30 on Thursdays in Manahawkin, New Jersey. So if you're down at the shore, we would love to have you. I have a commitment in my home group. My home group is my family. We're a little dysfunctional, but we're definitely not a glum lot. We love to have fun. We love to smile. And we love to show the newcomer hope. So I will tell you guys my story a little bit, what it was like, what happened, and my journey to God, and how I've stayed sober. So actually, I drove here tonight from New Jersey, but I actually was born and raised in Lancaster County, so I'm actually a Pennsylvania girl. But so I grew up in Lancaster County. I grew up in a very tumultuous home with my parents. Both of my parents were raised by alcoholics. My mom was in and out of foster care growing up. She never knew her father. And my own dad, his father was an alcoholic. So my house was a little chaotic. There was a lot of physical, mental, emotional abuse. And if you would have asked me before I got sober the reason why I drank or did any of the crazy things that I did, it was because if you grew up the way that I grew up and you went through the things that I went through, you would too. And I used that for a crutch for a long time. That was my reason, right? I blamed my parents. I blamed anybody but me. It wasn't until I went through the 12 steps that I found out that my parents were doing absolutely the best they could with what they had. And neither one of them was really shown a correct way to love, and that changed a lot of that perception for me. And I'll tell you guys a little bit more about my relationship with my parents further on. So from a young age, I always felt different, right? I always felt disconnected from other people. Me and Amanda were talking on the way down here, and I was like, I've always had 7 personalities. I don't know if anybody can relate with that. I was friends with everybody, but friends with nobody at the exact same time. I curated personalities and versions of me. We were talking, and I was if you ask me what kind of music I listen to, it's I don't really have an answer, because there's Pennsyltucky Jen, and then there's Jen who listens to gangster rap, and then there's Jen who loves rock music, and I was like a chameleon. I curated all these different versions of me from a young age to escape and to receive human validation. I needed anybody and everybody to like me, because from a young age I didn't like myself, and I couldn't breathe in the skin that I was in. from a very young age. And I remember sitting on the playground or like in school and seeing everybody interacting, everybody playing, you know, these relationships forming, friendships. And I can understand at like an intellectual level, but it wasn't something I was experiencing. That energy, that fun, that love that was going on between people, I wasn't experiencing that. I couldn't relate. It was like there was like a switch turned off in me, and I couldn't let people close enough to me or let you in, let you get to know me, because if you knew how I really felt I always felt like an imposter, right? Like I didn't belong, and I felt like if you found out what I really thought of myself or how I really felt inside, like you definitely wouldn't like me because I didn't like me. So that's what it was like growing up for me. I was always changing, like normal people change their behaviors to meet their goals, and I always changed my goals to meet my behaviors because I just couldn't show up, even at a young age. I remember in like middle school and high school, I just did the bare minimum. I was so disconnected, and when all of my friends were like getting ready to go to college, I just couldn't care, right? I'll backtrack a little bit before I kind of missed that part, but I'll backtrack a little bit. So my first drink, I still like very vivid to this day. I got alcohol poisoning from 99 apples. I was like in a field, like my friend like was like, we're going to get drunk. And I was like, okay, it's a good time. I was like a late bloomer. My first like drunk was 15. And I remember it was a bottle of 99 apples. It was god awful. And we drank the whole thing. And I just, you know, when you're drinking and you're like blacking out and you're coming to, and you're blacking out and you're coming to, and you're blacking out and you're coming to. And it was like a, what are those strobe lights? It's like flashing by you. Like that's what I remember. And I remember just feeling so free. And finally, like that bondage that I lived in for so long, the torture and the pain in my own mind, the hamster wheel that was always going constantly, the committee that was meeting, the dialogue that was always going, like I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, couldn't really do anything because I was literally crippled by my own fear and my own like selfishness. It just melted away. And I really could breathe for like the first time. And alcohol really did for me what I couldn't do for myself and what I had searched for so long. Like even going to church with my friends as like a young kid, like it was like I knew I needed something, but I was just so blocked off by myself. I had no idea what it was that I needed or what it was that I suffered from. So you would think that after that first night that I got alcohol poisoning, that would have deterred me. When I did come to, I woke up in my father's truck. That's like when I came to, that moment, I was like completely like plastered. And I woke up in my father's truck as he was like driving me home. And I was like, oh my God, like he's going to kill me. So when I got home, I remember I like held onto my legs to walk myself literally into the house, like thinking that like he didn't know like how drunk I was or that like I was trying to fool him. But I ended up with alcohol poisoning that night, and it absolutely did not deter me because after that, that's all I wanted to do. I wanted to drink with the older kids. I wasn't in like sports really, but my best friend was, and she was really popular. So we'd go to the parties with the guys, and it was like I wasn't an everyday drinker, but it was like I couldn't stop thinking about it. I couldn't stop thinking about the relief that I received. So any chance that I did get, I drank. You know, it was like the one thing that I looked forward to, and it started to become like an important part of my life. So fast forward to where I was. So all of my friends started going to college, and I remember my history teacher seeing my decline because I was an honor student. My teacher was like, I just don't understand, like, what are you going to do with your life? Like, what are you going to do? Everybody's ready to go to college. Everybody's making something of themselves. And, like, what are you doing with yourself? Like, you're not showing up to class. You're in summer school now. Like, what are you doing? And I just remember being like, I'm just going to take a year off to find myself. That's it. I'm going to find myself. And that was, like, my MO, my whole, like, teenage and, like, younger years was like, I'm going to find myself, as if happiness was this external source that I was going to go get. And when Facebook first was popular, every New Year's, I still cringe when I see the old posts, but every New Year's I would make this post that says and this is going to be the year that I do it, guys. This is going to be the year that I find myself. I'm going to find joy. I'm going to find happiness. I'm going to live my own life. And I was just in this full delusion that I always felt like I was supposed to be somewhere and I was late. And I didn't know where I was going, but I knew that I wasn't supposed to be here, and I was always running. My mother always called me Gypsy, because she's like, you have a gypsy soul, girl. You can never stay somewhere for too long. You always got to go. You always got to run. Who are you running from? And I had no idea that I was running from me. I was running from friend group to friend group, to relationship, sucking up all of the human power that I could get. And that wasn't working. I used to have a nickname. It's embarrassing now. I was really offended back then. I was like, I can't believe they call me that. They used to call me Jen Bunny, because I would hop to relationships. I would hop to friendships. And I was like, that's terrible. It's not me, but it absolutely was. I was a tornado in everybody's life around me. Drinking or not drinking, I was crazy because I needed relief at any cost. And if you had what I needed to get relief, I was going to take it from you. And if you didn't give it to me, I was going to run you over to get it in the process. And that was it. And I burned down bridges, and I lost friends and relationships. And most of my friends went to college. I didn't. Remember, I was taking that year off to find myself. Well, it turned into quite a few years. So I would go up to these colleges. One of my friends went to Shippensburg. One went to Penn State, Maine. So big party schools, right? So I went to these schools that I wasn't going to. And I was couch surfing at them, drinking really heavily. And I have a job. I wasn't really employable at this point. I wasn't doing much with my life except drinking. And it got to a point where, I would be gone for weeks at a time at these schools that I didn't go to. And, at a certain point, I was not welcome at parties at a school that I didn't go to. They would be you can come, but you can't bring Jen because she got into a fight, or she kissed somebody's boyfriend, or she stole something, or she threw up in somebody's tub. I don't know what it is with sinks and tubs, but every time I drank, I would end up in one. I don't know what it was. It was like a magnet, but people didn't want me in their homes because I was a hot mess. So anyways, it got to a point where I was going from relationship to relationship, because at this point, drinking was very prevalent. It was a high priority for me, getting drunk, escaping. I had to get relief. And I was jumping from relationship to relationship because men were like a higher power to me, and I needed that validation. And I really thought that I just had all these jerks coming into my life that, man, I just find these jerks, right? They just don't treat me right, and they cheat on me, and they're mean to me, and they don't give me what I want. And it wasn't until I went through this process with a sponsor that I found out that I was the common denominator in every single failed, sick, toxic relationship that I had. But I blamed it on everybody else. It was always somebody else's problem. It was never me. And that was the delusion that I spun. And that was the delusion that kept me in the downward spiral time and time again. But I was in this relationship with somebody who drank the way that I did, and he did crazy things the way that I did, and we got involved with some bad people and some bad things. And there was always times in my life where I said that I wouldn't do things to get what I needed to get relief, to get alcohol, to drink, to escape myself, this mental prison that I lived in. And I did those things, and I went to those places with those people, and I landed myself in my first detox. And I remember, still to this day, they called me King Baby. I don't know if anybody here knows what that means, but they would call me King Baby when I'd sit in detox. And I remember being like, on the phone with my mom, my poor mom. Mom, I need a carton of Newports, and I need you to get me out of here. Like, I am not like these people. And I would sit there. It was my first detox. I had never been to treatment. And people were raising their hands saying, like, I'm Bob, I'm an alcoholic. And I'd be like, Bob, I feel sorry for you. Like, that's, like, I'm not an alcoholic. Like, alcoholics are those, like, dirty old men under the bridge with no pants and the trench coat and the little brown paper bag. And it absolutely wasn't me. And I couldn't wait to get out of there. I couldn't relate. I wasn't like you people at all. And I felt really sorry for you that, like, you had to come to this place and live the rest of your life alcohol-free. Like, you really made that choice? Jeez. So I got out of there, and they were like, we'll see you soon. And I was like, no, you won't. I'm not coming back. And, like, a week later, I drank, and spiral went quick. I had landed myself right back into another treatment center. And at this treatment center, I remember this time reading the 12 steps of AA and reading them on the wall. And that's when, like, I first really started sitting in on meetings. I came to AA through the back door of another fellowship that I thought that I belonged in. Unfortunately, it was not for me. I didn't find my solution there. I wasn't able to stay sober there. So I remember sitting in these meetings, again, hearing people say that they were an alcoholic, and I just didn't think that I was one. I just couldn't, in my mind, it still was anything else but me. It still was anything else but what I suffered from. So fast forward, I got out of there, drank. I was in like 5 different treatment centers, and it was like that spiral. I was like, now I'm Jen Bunny hopping treatment centers and psych wards and hospitals, like I'm all over the place because I just can't surrender. Because I had to do it my way nonstop. I had to hit my head constantly. I had to do it my way. I was going to figure out how. I was going to MacGyver this, MacGyver you, and I was running on self-propulsion and self-will. And it got scary, and it got really dark really quick. And I remember still to this day looking in the mirror, and I was probably like 80 pounds soaking wet. And I was homeless because nobody would take me in. Nobody wanted anything to do with me. I was living in some person's basement, and they didn't have plumbing, to give you an idea of what that was like. But I remember I caught myself in the mirror one day, and I hadn't showered in like 2 weeks. And I was just this little shell of a person. And I remember looking in the mirror at myself, and nobody was home. Nobody was home. There was nothing in the eyes. Nobody was home. And I remember looking at myself thinking, like, how did we get here, right? I didn't wake up saying this is what I wanted to do. But at that point, I had accepted that that was how I was going to live for the rest of my life. And that was it. And what a dark place to be, to accept that I can't not drink. And when I drink, I can't stop drinking. And I just thought I was absolutely crazy. Like, I really thought that there was something mentally wrong with me, and you were going to have to lock me up, because when I got sober, I got crazy. And everybody said, if you just stop drinking, you'll be okay. And guess what? When I stopped drinking, things got much worse. My mind was much louder. I felt I would get out of treatment and be like, take me back, because, like, I felt like a wild animal when I got out of treatment. I didn't know what to do with myself. I didn't know how to live sober. I didn't know how to manage this mind, because I didn't know what I truly suffered from. I just thought that I was crazy. The last treatment center I went to was in Pennsylvania, a wonderful treatment center, and they had like big book studies there, and it was 12-step based. And I remember when I went, it was like my last chance, right? My family was done with me. And I didn't know if I was coming or going when I got there, honestly, because every time that I went to treatment, I got out and I did the same thing. And what was going to be different about this time? I just knew that it was cold and it was winter, and I didn't want to do it anymore. And I went, and I remember sitting there, a broken person, and this old man came up he came from AA to bring a meeting in. And I remember sitting there, and I was like, what has this old man got for me? What do you got? But I was broken just enough so that there was a crack where God could get in. And I remember listening that night, and instead I wasn't judging this man. I heard him. I had heard plenty of speakers before, but that night I heard him. I heard that man. And he talked about what he suffered from. He talked about alcoholism, and he talked about the threefold illness. And he talked about that mental obsession. And that's where he got me, because I didn't know that anybody else suffered the way that I did. And I didn't know that I had an allergy, and I didn't know that I had a spiritual malady. I had no idea. But when that man got up there and he talked about the disease of alcoholism and its threefold illness, for the first time in my life, I thought to myself, he's on to something. I have that. I have that. When I wake up in the morning, I have no control. I didn't know that I didn't have control. I had no idea. But I had no control over drinking. I would swear to myself the night before that I wasn't going to drink, and I wake up in the morning and I swore I wasn't going to drink, and I drank anyways. I drank against my own will. What a painful place to be. What a painful thing to do. And when he talked about that, he said that God had removed his obsession. What a funny thing. He said that when he first got sober, his first sponsor told him to pray to keep him sober in the morning and night. And that the obsession had been lifted from him. And when he talked and shared his story of what it was like, what happened, what it was like today, his journey to God, I heard him. And I was open-minded enough that I thought, this man is sharing the language of the heart. He suffers from what I suffer from, and I know that by the way he explains things, right? By the way he breaks it down. I heard him, and something in my heart shifted. And it never really occurred to me to pray to God, to ask for God to remove the obsession of my mind. Like, I felt like so crazy. Like, this man saying he's got the obsession of the mind, and God took it away, and I get on my knees and pray, and I follow, what's outlined in the 12 steps. Like, this is going to happen for me. And I didn't know if it was going to happen for me, but nothing else had worked, right? So I started getting on my knees and I started praying while I was still in treatment. And I started reading the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. I didn't know what I was really reading, but when I was reading Bill's story, I related so much. I remember sitting there being like, oh my God, this is me, this is me, this is me. Like, I relate to this. And I had heard the book a million other times, but I think that when you're ready, you're ready. And at that point, that was my time. And while I was still in treatment, the obsession to drink was removed from me. And I remember waking up one day, and I used to write my numbers on the mirror, and I remember thinking, I didn't have the obsession yesterday or this morning. And it's just my experience that, since that day, the obsession to drink has been removed from me. Thank God. But so I got out of treatment, and that time, something was different. I started taking suggestions and getting out of the way. I had no idea what I was doing. I was terrified. They wanted me to go to a sober living house, and I was like, I don't really like women. But I ended up in a house with 12 girls. And really, it was just fear. I was so afraid of women when I came to Alcoholics Anonymous. I didn't want you near me because I knew they were going to see me. I knew that they were going to see me. And it was like that fear from childhood. I don't want you to see what I really look like on the inside, to see what I feel, what I think, because then you're going to reject me, and then who's going to take me? So I had such a wall up when I came to Alcoholics Anonymous. I didn't really want anybody to talk to me, but I would show up. I was in Florida when I got sober. I did the Florida Shuffle. That's where I got sober. So I went from treatment to Pennsylvania to Florida, and I went to halfway there. And I was there for a year. It was amazing. I was so apprehensive in the beginning, but I needed to shut up and listen to what other people told me, and that's what I did. And I remember I was just showing up every day, not really knowing where I was going or where I was going to end up. But I remember sitting in a meeting, and this woman turns around and she's like, "Hi, I'm Becky." And I was like, "Oh my God, like, hi Becky." Like, I was like terrified of her because she was like happy and smiling, and I was like totally afraid because like, why are you talking to me? What's wrong with you? Like, why are you super happy? It's weird. But I remember she asked me if I had a sponsor, and I was like, yeah, like instantly, yeah. I got it all figured out. I got a sponsor. Don't worry about it. Like, I'm on my whatever step. And I ended up seeing that woman like at every single meeting that week. She was popping up everywhere. And I was like praying for direction, right? And I was at the one meeting, I was like, fine. Like, it wasn't me that spoke because I certainly didn't want a sponsor. I was terrified of women. And I was like, will you sponsor me? And she was so excited, right? So stoked. And she was like, yes, absolutely. Like, I'm going to pick you up tonight. We're going to go to a meeting. And I was like, okay. So I'm at my halfway house, right? And I'm standing outside because she said she's going to show up. And I hear like, boom, 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 and the speakers are jumping, right? And I can hear them coming before I see her. And I see the hair flowing, right? And there's a car full of girls. A whole car packed full of girls, like sober women in AA. And I was like, oh God. Like, I was so uncomfortable. My clothes didn't fit right. Like, not like I was just, I was like crawling in my own skin, right? So insecure, so afraid. And they pulled up and they were like, jamming, so happy, get in, come with us. And I was like, I was horrified, right? And I just went anyways, because what else did I have to do? I got in the car, right? We went to a meeting and she introduced me to everybody, and like, she didn't give me an option. Like, I had to sit in the front row, and like, I had to wear something nice. Like, I remember the first couple meetings I went to with her, I wanted to be cool, right? And I was a little rough around the edges, so my outfits were a little different than they are today. And she made me change. She was like, you're not going to a meeting like that. We're not working in the room. Like, you're changing your outfit right now. And you're going to show up as a woman. You may not have been, but you are a woman of dignity and grace. And you're going to start acting as such. And I was like, okay. So I didn't have any of those clothes, so I wore hers. But this woman took me everywhere. She put me right in her pocket. Like, I couldn't be left alone. Period, right? Like, with this mind, like, and she knew that. I didn't have to tell her that. She could see it. It was written all over me. I was a hot mess. I hated myself. And I was so uncomfortable all the time, but she made me uncomfortable. She made me show up when I didn't want to, right? She'd take me to home group. She'd introduce me to everybody. And if they asked, like, who's new, she'd make me raise my hand. And I'm like, oh my God, like, I had to, like, introduce myself. Like, I had to have a home group. I had to have a commitment. She started taking me through the book right away, like, line by line. We sat down every single week, and we went through the book. I went to this really cool, I don't know if anybody's ever been to it, but I went to this Back to Basics thing that Wally P did, and it was like really amazing. That was like, I had like the most amazing little spiritual awakening there. And she took me through the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous as it's outlined in this book, and I had a spiritual awakening as the result of the 12 steps. And I started going out and sponsoring other women. Like, I was on fire for AA, lit up, but old habits die hard. I thought, like, once you got through the 12 steps, you could have a relationship, and that was what I did. So I got into a relationship with somebody who was also sober and who had been through the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, and we were, like, going to go save the world. Like, we were going to sponsor everybody, and it was just going to be really great. But so the shine wore off of him pretty quickly, and suddenly he wasn't doing it for me. But it turns out that I was pregnant early into the relationship, which I had not planned. And it's like a funny joke now with my family. It doesn't sound too funny when I say it that way, but I never wanted children, ever. Don't have the patience. Don't like children. Didn't want children, period. And it's like the running joke. I always used to say, like, I'll be the cool aunt, but, like, I don't want to have kids. Like, I'll play with your kids and then drop them off. I don't want to be an aunt. I don't want to be a mom. And I found myself pregnant, right? Let me just say, thank God for good sponsorship, right? Thank God for the 12 Steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, because I might have had a different outcome today, but thankfully I am a mom today. I get to be a mom today. But, so, me and my sponsor sat down, we looked at it in black and white. We did this little thing called a Benjamin Franklin list, and I brought it to God, and that was what was on my heart. That's how actually I got back to New Jersey. So that time that I went through the steps was like very mechanical. It was very mechanical, like X, Y, Z, this is the solution, this is where to find it in the book. Like, that was it. Like, I'll beat you with it. Like, you got a problem, this is your solution, go forth and prosper. Like, that was it, And so I moved to New Jersey because my other half was from New Jersey. We are still together, but so he was from New Jersey, and we moved up here, and I didn't know anybody, right? I'm pregnant. I moved to this new town. I don't know anybody. I don't know how to get anywhere. I don't have any friends. I don't have a network. I don't have anything. So I go to this young people's meeting, and the first person that I meet is my best friend today, Amanda. She was the first woman that came up to me at that meeting. I was terrified. And she came over to me and was like, "Are you new?" And I was like, "No, like, I'm not new. Like, I've been around a little bit, Like, I was afraid. I was afraid. I wanted to sound cool, and like I had it all figured out. But these women took me in, and they welcomed me, and I met my new sponsor. And I remember like getting to a point when I first moved up to New Jersey that I had gotten away from doing the things that kept me sane, that kept me sober, right? I started working the 12 steps backwards, and I got to a place where I was so broken. I remember I was on the phone with this woman. I don't remember her name anymore, but I was on the phone with her, and she was like, I told her I needed a new sponsor, and she was like, "I know this girl. This is who you should ask." And I'm like, "I know Faith. Like, she doesn't have time. I already asked her to sponsor me. She doesn't have time." And she was like, "You should ask her." And I was like, "I know she doesn't have time. Like, I'm not asking her. I already talked to her a couple months ago." And she was like, "I think you should call her." Okay, fine. So I call her. She's like, "I just finished up with school, and I actually have time right now. Like, that's perfect." And I was like, "All right, fine, God. Like, okay." So I start working with Faith. And at this point, I started having an experience with the 12 steps that was different than the first time. The first time was what I needed at that point, and I'm so grateful and so thankful for Becky. Like, I still talk to her to this day. Like, she was amazing, but I needed more. And when Faith took me through the book, my experience went from here to here, and I started having that real deep spiritual awakening. I had withheld a couple things in my first 5th step that she was like, I remember I was writing my 4th step, and she said to me, she was like, "I want you to write down the ugliest things you want to tell anybody, what you're taking to the grave. When you're writing your 4th step, before you even start, write that down on a piece of paper, and I want you to tuck it in the back." And I was like, okay, I can do this. So I did it was like the longest 4th step of my life, too. She had me writing out the most craziest things, and like, I always like get so excited when like I have a sponsee who's going to write their 4th step. I'm like, this is going to be so much fun because you have so much to write out. We're really going to get down to this stuff. But we sat down to go through to go over my 4th step and my 5th step, and she was like, "Remember, did you write that paper I told you to write?" I was like, "Yeah, I got it. All those secrets, I'm not telling anybody." She's like, "Good, get that out. We're going over those first." And I was like, "What?" Like, I thought I wrote these down because I thought we weren't going to go over them. She's like, "No, we're going to get those out of the way because that's going to keep you blocked from the rest of the experience that we're trying to have here today. So let's get that out of the way." And it was amazing. It was amazing. And it turned out that I actually changed my sobriety date as well, because when I first got sober, when I first thought that I got sober was November 1st of 2013. But I was, again, just my experience, I was still on like psych meds, right? And they were still a crutch for me. And at that point, it was on my heart. And it was, again, just my experience, it was on my heart that I didn't need to be on them, right? So that's why I changed my sobriety date to July 5th, because I came off of those psych meds. And amazingly, I don't need them today. I lived my whole life with them as a crutch. But thankfully, I don't need them today. So, and again, that's just my experience. Whatever your experience is your experience. I don't have any judgment or anything like that. But so we continued through the 12 steps. She also told me on my 4th step which stuck with me, and I thought it was really rude at the time. She said, "Do you know you never wanted anything nice for anybody in your entire life unless it benefited you?" That doesn't feel too good, like, at all. And that stuck with me, because it was true. I didn't care about you at all unless you could give me something or benefit me in some way. But, so I moved on to my amends, right? And that's where it got tricky. She tricked me again with my amends. She was like, "I want you to say, like, now, maybe, never," and, like, I had to do, like, nevers first, and I was like, I feel like that's not fair. But thank God for good sponsorship, because God knew that I needed her, and she knew what I needed. But I made amends to my family, that broken family that I had, right? That were raised by alcoholics, that only knew how to hurt, that only knew how to hide. Not share your fears, don't share your emotions, suck it up, okay, and get on with it. That was my life growing up. My dad was such a tough exterior man that he didn't do hugs. That's just how it was. He didn't say, "I love you." That's just how it was. And when I made amends to my dad, I'm a ball baby, sorry, just excuse me. When I made amends to my dad, I sat across from him, this man that I was afraid of my whole life, terrified of him. We did not have a good relationship. It was very toxic, very tumultuous. And when I made amends to my father, I sat across from him, and for the first time in my entire life, I saw my dad for who he was. And I saw my dad as a child of God, who was never taught how to love properly. Same thing for my mom. And that resentment that I had just melted away. And today, with my father, I show up in our relationship as that example. When my dad shuts down, my dad is still my dad. That's the thing. He doesn't have to change. My parents and my family, they don't have to change. I have to change. They are exactly who they are, who they're meant to be in God's world, and I'm the one that has to change, right? So with God's power, I get to show up for my parents today. I made amends to my family. It was amazing. I've had so many good amends stories. I had an amends that I wasn't able to make because I couldn't even locate this girl. She's one of us. She was in and out of jail, in and out of treatment, on the streets. And I finally, one day, she popped up in, gotta love Facebook, she popped up in my, people you may know, and I was like, so I called my sponsor, and, she's like, "You already know what you need to do." So I reached out to this girl, right? And she was on my never list. I was not making amends to Annie because she was mean. And she bullied me. And, it was a whole thing. But anyways, I was not making amends to her because I hated her. And she was like my arch nemesis, right? Wasn't going to do it. Here she is in my people you may know, right? So I sent her a friend request and a message on Facebook so I could get her number to talk to her. Yeah. I'm like, full send, God, here we go. And it was eating me up, right? I'm in the shower shampooing my hair, and the thoughts are coming in you got to make that amends. You got to make that. And I'm like, oh my God, fine, right? So that night I sent her a friend request, sent her a message. Boom, she gets back to me and she's like, "I'm so glad to hear from you. I have been in and out of Alcoholics Anonymous struggling, and I'm having a hard time staying sober, and I would love to meet you at a meeting." Oh my God. Wow. So I'm driving out to Pennsylvania, right, to make this amends. 3-hour drive. I'm going out just to make this amends. And I'm driving. There's a tractor trailer as I'm sometimes I have to tell you, sometimes things in my life are so comical. I'm sure you guys have had experiences with it, but I'm driving. There's a tractor trailer that says "Only God knows," and I'm like, really? I feel like that's a little extreme, God. And I'm I had to take a picture of it because I was to my boyfriend, I'm "You're not going to believe this. Only God knows." And I'm okay. So I go out there to make this amends, right? I show up at the meeting early. I'm ready. like fully prepped. And she doesn't come into the meeting until the meeting starts. And when she comes in, she is a hot mess. And she is drunk. And she is homeless and she is broken. Right? And I'm like, it's nothing like other people being a mirror for you. Right? So she comes in, she sits down, she's just crying. Like, she is just literally having a hard time. And she shares, right? She just puts her hands up and she shares. And she shared her truth, right? And she was saying she was having a hard time coming back. And I really just felt like in that moment, like I was exactly where I needed to be. You know, so after the meeting, I made amends to that girl. And she told me, she was like, how did you know you were going to keep your daughter? Like, how did you know? And I just told her my experience, right? And I talked to her about my experience, and I shared that with her. And she told me she was pregnant and that she didn't know whether or not she was going to keep the baby because she couldn't stay sober. And I'm telling you, when I left that amends that night, I cried for like a week straight. I just couldn't stop crying thinking about her, because when I left her, I didn't know what was going to happen. 6 months later, I got a message on Facebook, right? And she messaged me to tell me that she was sober and that she decided to keep her baby. And me making that amends to her that night was the reason why she decided to keep her baby. And she wanted to thank me. And she's still sober. And I just think sometimes, like, we absolutely, I mean, I should say for myself, but I never know how God's going to use me. I never know how my experiences that I've had, how that's going to affect somebody else's life, right? I had no idea when I sat down with a sponsor living in Florida in a halfway house, scared, terrible. Like, I had no idea how I was going to take care of this baby, right? But God provided the entire way. And then I got to go back and share this experience with this broken woman, right? That's what we do here. But thank God for good sponsorship, and thank God for the 12 steps. So those are just some of, like, my immense stories. But I know that I have 11 minutes left, so I'll bring it back around. But I have had so many amazing, like, experiences through being sober. You know, I only have a couple years. I celebrated 7 years in July. But the truth is that I never thought that I would be free, ever, right? I didn't know how the 12 steps were going to work. I had no idea. I was terrified to sponsor other women. When she was like, go sponsor other women, I was afraid to, because I thought, and I could still think like that today, that I don't have anything to offer. You know, my mind can tell me that, what do you have to offer? You know, but the truth of that is, I've had an experience with the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. I've had a spiritual awakening as the result of the 12 steps. And my job now is to continue my conscious contact with God, to continue my growth, and to show up and have new experiences and share that with other people, right? But the thing is, I am still an alcoholic. Like, I am by no means perfect whatsoever. I am still an alcoholic, and I wake up every single day with untreated alcoholism, and it is my decision whether or not I'm going to take action to treat my condition, right? I can tell you right now, if I am going through my day like, I have to do this, I have to do that, or I'm in collision with other people, I can already tell you at that point where I'm at. Then I can tell you that I probably didn't pray that morning. But what I can tell you is, on the mornings that I do sit quietly with God, my day is completely different. My mindset is completely different. How I show up is completely different. I get to show up. And I have that perspective change, right? Because on my own power, I don't have the power to relieve my own alcoholism. I don't have the power to change other people. I don't have the power to change myself. I don't have the power to show up. I don't have the power to be a nice person, because if I'm untreated, I am not a nice person. But God makes that He makes that possible for me, right? My life and my sobriety has to depend on conscious contact with my Creator. It has to. And throughout my sobriety, I've had a lot of ups and downs. And that's the truth. And I think for a long time in sobriety, I thought that I had to be perfect. And I thought that I had to get up there and deliver this slam home and everybody would be like, oh my God, you have the best story ever. Wow, those one-liners really got me, like good job, And I wouldn't share my home group, and I was crippled because I thought that I had to be perfect, right? And I followed people around and I put them on a pedestal, right? And they failed me. Human power failed me. And I found I found myself a couple different times in sobriety working my way backwards and getting away from God, right? Because if I don't do what I need to do to stay here and to stay sane and sober, I can get sick very quickly. And the truth is that, resentment is a number one offender, but I think pride kills a lot of alcoholics as well. Because for a lot of time, I sat in the rooms of AA afraid to tell people where I was really at, how I was really feeling, how I was really showing up in my relationships, or the lack of showing up. Because I didn't want people to judge me. I thought I had to be perfect here. And I thought if I wasn't perfect, you guys wouldn't like me. And it wasn't until I got to a spiritual bottom in sobriety that I had to make a change. And I had to do something different, right? The experiences that I had previously weren't going to continue to keep me sober, and they weren't going to continue to keep me lit up. I had to continue having new experiences, right, in order to stay sober, in order to stay free. How do I have new experiences? Newcomers. I can tell you that anytime I ended up in a dark place in sobriety and I asked God with my whole heart to help me, He gave me a newcomer. Time and time again, my God knows that I have to be moving. If my feet are not moving, I'm not going to be in a good place. And every time I ask God, He says, go. Here's a new girl. Go. Here's a new girl. And that's how I have those new experiences. My job now is to carry the message. And like I said, my mind can tell me, my message isn't great, or my message isn't a big deal, right? And it doesn't matter, because it's not even my message. It's not even my message. I don't keep myself sober. I don't have the power to keep myself sober. God is the only one that can do that for me. And I can tell you that as a result of the 12 steps, as a result of helping other women and showing up, even when I don't want to, even when I'm dragging my feet, even when I'm cursing that I have to, and my sponsor says I have to anyways, God always meets me where I am. This book always meets me where I am, no matter how far I've gotten away from things. And I think it's important to share the fact that I've had those dark times in sobriety, because the good news is that there's always a solution. The good news is that no matter how far I get away from God and my mind convinces me that it's going to be some long journey back, it's going to take so much work, and it's going to be my mind will tell me that it's got to be this big production to make my way back to God, and then that sounds overwhelming, and then I don't do it because it just sounds overwhelming, But the truth is that if I get out of the way long enough, right, and I just move my feet and do it anyways, and I just ask God to help me to be willing, that's all that matters. God doesn't care, right? But I get to show up today. I'm employable. I work for a bank. I'm a banker. That's crazy. I used to rob people, and now I'm helping them set up their finances. There's a catch-22. I get to be a mom today. My daughter's 6 years old, and she is, God help me, she is the spiciest, sassiest, most beautiful God creation, and she is my mirror. She is my sensitive little girl. She is my mirror, and I can tell when I'm off with her. My boyfriend and I are still together today. We bought a house in April. some days, it's been funny, like I've been really grateful this past year. Some days I'm just sitting there and I'm like, this is our house. I'll look at him and be like, this is our house. We're paying a mortgage, right? We used to live in a 1-bedroom apartment in Pompano Beach, and the only piece of furniture we had in our house was a twin-size air mattress that was half deflated because it had like a hole. So we would like blow it up every night. And then in the morning, since I'm smaller than him, I would be up and he would be on the ground. But I can tell you that like we were just happy, right? Because we were sober. But I get to show up. I get to be those things today. I have peace today. I got to tell you, it took me so long to be able to look in the mirror and be okay with the person that's in the mirror. Like, that's a real gift for me. Yeah, do I have like the tangible things? Absolutely, that I never thought I would have. But the real gift is the peace that I have today, because I don't have that crazy hamster mind that doesn't stop, right? I don't have that obsession to drink, right? I don't suffer the way that I used to anymore with the bondage of self, contingent upon my spiritual condition. But I just wanted to share a story with you guys before I end. So there's this mom, right? And I heard this story one time, and it's always stayed with me, and I always love to share it. So there's this mom, and she has a toddler, right? And she has this toddler, and she also has a newborn baby, right? So she has a little boy and she has a newborn baby, and the baby has its own room, has its own nursery. And before the baby was born, the little boy was like so excited to meet the baby, right? Always talking, when's the baby gonna be here? Da, da, da. And when the baby was born, they had like a gate to the bedroom because the toddler was like so overzealous to get in there that like the mom was like a little bit like, afraid. So she put that barrier up. Well, one night she hears the gate, right? And the gate's down, and she hears it, and she's running, right? So she gets to the doorway, and she pauses before she goes in, right? And she looks, and there is the little toddler, right, at the side of the bed. And she pauses, and she's listening, and the toddler leans in and says, quick, tell me what God's like. I'm starting to forget. And that's what we do here in Alcoholics Anonymous. We continue our journeys, right? And the people who are coming in who are sick and suffering, or the people who are here that are sick and suffering, we continue to lead each other shoulder to shoulder back to God. So thanks for letting me share tonight, guys.
My name's Nick. I'm an alcoholic. Thank you for that incredible message of hope and recovery. Let's give our thanks for Jen for coming out. Food and fellowship starts at 8 o'clock. If you want to be in service, we could always use help. We could use help cleaning up. We leave those tables with the chairs as they are. We have some excellent ways to stay sober and stay connected. We have a Facebook page, the Conscious Contact Speaker Group, Doylestown Recovery Group also, and a YouTube page. So search those out. And we'll thank our speaker. We form a line. They come here on their own time and expense. So it's customary for us to form a line to thank her. So we have an excellent way of closing. If you'd like to close with the Lord's Prayer.